Hello everyone, I'm Salad, and today we're going to be taking a look at some of the terminal lore things that were in Halo 3 that I may have missed. Some of these we've seen before, but I know some of them are different depending on the difficulty level that you play, so it'll be good to go over these again and figure out what information I may have overlooked in my single playthrough that I did. Again, I may have read some of these before, but I'm going to read them again because even the first time I read them, I likely didn't understand them fully. And even now, when I read them right now, I'm probably also not going to understand them fully. For anyone new that's watching this, I am in the middle of a blind Let's Play, so no spoilers, please, in the comments. Don't confirm or deny any of my theories that I'm going to be making and statements I'm going to be making in this video. A lot of them are going to be wrong. I'm very likely going to get a lot of this information incorrect and not going to understand things fully, but that's okay. I'm sure by the end of this playthrough, I'll understand things a bit better. And maybe if you're watching this in the future and have already completed all the Halo games, feel free to correct me in the comments at that point. However, if you have any lore info that's not mentioned in any of the games, or like if it's mentioned in books or things like that, feel free to leave that in the comments. I'm always happy to learn more about the Halo universe that I wouldn't normally be able to get access to, just from not reading the books and things like that. So if you have cool little tidbits of information that you want to let me know that I would never figure out any other way, then feel free to let me know. So let me get started reading this here, and we'll see if we can pick up on anything. I believe all these are Forerunner logs. At least that's what they were called, but I don't know if that they are written by the monitors or not. I had that suspicion in Halo while I was playing through Halo 3. I don't know if that's true or not, or if they're just written by some random Forerunner. It's probably not true. It's probably somebody important who's been writing these things. But anyways, let me get reading this, and maybe I'll figure out some clues on what this is all about. So, observed extensive ground action on some coordinates. 9,045 survivors barricaded within central government building. Structure's defenses inadequate to withstand extended siege by enemy ground forces. So I assume that the ground forces being referenced here are the Flood. Estimate position overrun in 173 hours. So this sounds familiar. We might have read this one before. 846 smaller groups and less defensible structures. Global distribution corresponding to probability model zeta. Okay, so they were calculating the probabilities and the and how the flood would spread, things like that. So the probability model zeta, that's zeta's at the end of it sounds like it's at the end of the alphabet or something like that. It's probably the worst probability model, I would guess. Estimated local position overrun in 9 hours. Observed local naval forces engage enemy irregular naval group near a location. Enemy group consisted of 149 commercial shipping vessels, passenger ferries, and private recreational vessels from neighboring system. Oh, so the enemy in this case is shipping vessels and passenger ferries? Oh, I get it. Because the flood infected them. Okay, I was wondering why the enemy group didn't consist of any actual battleships. It's the flood. They don't need any actual battleships. They just took over shipping vessels and can ram into things and spread themselves everywhere. That's their style. So that makes sense. Enemy losses were total. No damage was sustained by local naval vessels. Okay, so they managed to fend them off there. However, it was immediately apparent the enemy group sought only to enter the atmosphere and make landfall. In this, they were partially successful. Okay, so they blew up their ships while they were headed towards wherever this was, but the flood still managed to disperse into the land, so that's going to be a problem. Observed extensive ground action at the location. Enemy forces lacked basic unit cohesion, but quickly gained numerical superiority. Yeah, that could have easily this situation that they're talking about could have easily happened on Earth if the events of Halo 3 did not go the way that they did. Although I still suspect that maybe we didn't get all the flood in Halo 3, but I guess we're going to have to see. Things did seem to go a little too smoothly for us. 32 hours after enemy landfall, 83% of local naval forces advocated total destruction of the biosphere. Okay, so it only took 32 hours for the planet that they were on to be a total loss, and for them to be thinking about just nuking the whole place. Okay, that's even faster than I would have expected, but it doesn't surprise me too much. It is the flood after all. Following the evacuation of unmolested population centers, enemy losses were total. Okay, so they did end up destroying their planet. But the evacuation of the population centers, I doubt everybody who evacuated was completely clean. That's probably going to be an issue. Estimated number of citizens evacuated before commencement of orbital blanket bombardment. A little over 1 million civilians and 42,000 military. 0.0006% of total population. Yeah, somebody in the comments gave me some numbers before about Covenant planet populations and I think also human planet populations. The population numbers in this game are quite insane. Quite ridiculous amounts of people live on all these different planets. So only a little over 1 million civilians surviving is extremely small. That's pretty bad. Okay, so that was Terminal 1. And I noticed that some of these let you know if they're on what difficulty levels they're able to be accessed on. So this one I think we might have already read. No message from Mendicant Bias in command log upon shutdown. I don't know what that means. Is that part of this log entry, or is that written at the end of the log entry? I have no idea. I'm going to ignore that for now. The following appears if you access the terminal on easy, normal, or heroic. Okay, so we have not seen this then. Upon being rerouted to new destination within terminal. Does it mean just this line? Upon being rerouted to new destination within terminal, or does it mean this whole thing? Huh. Fragment 1 out of 7, recorded verbatim, interpreted post cataclysm. Okay, so this is a conversation, or somebody was saying things and it was recorded. And post cataclysm, so this must be after the flood started taking over everything, or is it after they activated the Halo stations? So L is saying categorization has sped since the improvements were announced, but there are many hurdles. The indexing of sentient species may have irreversible effects on the surviving insentient species. What does it mean by that? The indexing of sentient species. We will have extinction events and irreparable environmental harm on at least 18 worlds. Current projections estimate post-archival cataclysm on as many as 31 worlds. Post-archival cataclysm? The paucity of sentience has been a blessing in this regard? So is this saying that they were trying to preserve sentient species after they activated the Halo station, but they were not able to protect all of the insentient species, and that could be obviously that would do a lot of harm to the environment. But I mean, they're already activating the Halo stations. That's already going to be a big issue. So are they basically saying that the lack of diversity in the fauna is going to be a big problem moving forward? And then what do they mean by post-archival cataclysm? They estimate post-archival cataclysm on as many as 31 worlds. Are they estimating that the flood will be back? Is that what kind of cataclysm they're talking about? Or what cataclysm are they referring to there? I'm not sure. Okay, so L is the librarian. Okay, then D. So in some of the uh in some of the terminal cutscenes that we've watched, there was the librarian who was referenced. There was also this other person who was referenced, that was supposedly even more of a pain to deal with than the Flood in some respects. Some really strong, powerful person. Could that be who D is referring to? I don't know. We'll see. How formal you are, librarian. We're receiving shipments of indexed beings. Okay, so they are cataloging and probably attempting to protect certain amounts of certain species, kind of like Noah's Ark, more frequently than communications. Don't compound scarcity with brevity. What does he mean by that? We're receiving shipments of index beings more frequently than communications. Don't compound scarcity with brevity. Okay, I think I understand what it's saying here. The librarian is saying that it's a problem that we're not able to protect enough species fast enough. We're not able to that they're unhappy. The librarian is unhappy that the Forerunners are not able to save everything. But whoever this D person is saying we're working as fast as we can. It's not that our the numbers are too little. It's that we have too little time. I think that's what's being said there. I know things beyond the Maginot line. I think that's how you pronounce that. I don't really know. But I worry about you. I've asked you time and time again, abandon your cataloging, come back inside where my fleets can keep you safe. Come back inside. Does he mean inside the Ark? That would make sense. And of course, now the naming makes sense now. The Ark is where probably they were storing all of these species, to preserve them. So the Ark was probably the only safe place from the Halo rings. They activated the Halo rings, and then the beings that were stored, the sentient species that were stored inside the Ark, were sent back out, likely to other planets to repopulate them. I think I'm getting that right. But the librarian was still outside of the Ark, trying to bring back more and more species. Now, I did have a theory when watching the terminal cutscenes that the librarian might have been an AI of some sort, because they're cataloging things and they're a librarian. I don't know. I felt like it could have been in a Metroid Prime 3 style mothership AI type of thing, that maybe had a big part in the Forerunner civilization. But that doesn't seem to be the case here, since the librarian can obviously go out or in, outside or inside the Ark. So it seems like the librarian was an actual physical person. And then yeah, so whoever this D person is wants them to be safe. That's reasonable. So the librarian says, would that it were my choice. I've committed to this course because it is the right thing to do. We no longer have the manpower or material to excise remedial measures at a planetary level. I certainly can't justify using the transit measure to save my own skin. Okay, I assume that's like teleportation or something. When there are still so many innocents to protect and index. So they've been using the word index a lot. And the tool that we use to activate the Halo stations is also called the index. Is there some kind of connection there? I mean, it seems like there should be. But I can't see how indexing the leftover surviving sentient species and an item to activate the Halo stations, I can't see the connection there. But obviously there should be one, since they're both called index, and they're really pushing that terminology through here. So that's got to be important somehow, but I don't fully understand how. You know I oppose your mission, but you're exceeding its parameters anyway. You've put yourself in jeopardy. You've done enough. If you'll not come to me, I will find my way to you. Okay, so the librarian and this person are just talking to each other, and apparently they have a very close relationship if this D person cares so much about the librarian. And Elle says, we have no time to spare. Didact. So I've heard that word before as well. The monitor said it, and I don't remember where he said it. When the monitor said it before, I was not assuming that they were talking about a person's name. When they said didact, I don't actually know what the word didact means, but in my mind, for some reason, I thought that a didact was like a contract or a constitution or something or some rules to follow. That's what when I heard the word didact, that's the meaning that came into my head because I didn't understand what the word actually meant. That's what I gathered from the context when the monitor was speaking before. At least I think so because I don't even remember when the monitor even said didact, but I remember him saying it. So that's about all I can say on that front. Is that I clearly did not understand that didact was a person, but now I know. Every vessel we can fill, we send to the Ark. I dare not cease the mission. Not now. Not until I've done all I can. Each one of these souls is finite and precious, and I'm close. I'm close to saving them all. How is she close to saving them all? Because they said that they were saving the sentient species, but didn't have time for the insentient species. Is the librarian actually going to have enough time to store all of them? Does that actually come to pass? It seems like they don't have enough time, but the librarian seems to insist that they do. Well, Fragment ends. The following appears only if you access the terminal in Legendary. Okay, so this is the one we may have seen. I definitely have not say. I definitely may have missed some of these in game though, so we shall see. So 30,000 hours have passed since I left the Maginot Sphere, or the Maginot Sphere, or I think it's Maginot Sphere, and entered the contested space. The enemy is everywhere. Despite this, the morale of my charges remains high. They wake, clean themselves, fuel their bodies, communicate with one another, eliminate waste, train to destroy the enemy, and return to sleep. The sacrifices they have chosen to make on the behalf of their brethren fills me with pride. So they've entered contested space, so I guess they've entered flood-infested territory, or areas where the flood is trying to take over. And the morale of my charges, so I assume that this is the librarian then writing all this stuff, and they have people with them that are helping them out. But why would the librarian have to specify that they wake and clean themselves and fuel their bodies and communicate with one another? Those are pretty basic things to say that your bodyguards do. You wouldn't normally say those kinds of things unless that was something special. Like maybe these bodyguards are mechanical, maybe they're robots, maybe they're monitors. I don't know. Trained to destroy the enemy and return to sleep. The sacrifices they've chosen to make on behalf of their brethren. So maybe they are the monitors. I had a theory that the monitors were once Forerunners, and they'd given up their physical bodies to become these machines with consciousness and fulfill whatever they needed to fulfill to protect the universe and things like that. Is that what's going on here? Because otherwise, I can't understand how this sentence would make sense. The librarian, I assume that the librarian's talking here. The librarian talking about how they wake and clean themselves. That wouldn't seem to make too much sense if that wasn't the case. If only I could save them all, but they know, perhaps even better than I, that that is not possible. 37 seconds ago. All right, I moved beyond my ability to observe the event. Wait a second. Hold on. Is the text in yellow? 30,000 hours, 37 seconds, 2 hours, 3 minutes. It's not in order. So I don't understand what those they seem like they're supposed to be timestamps, but otherwise if they were timestamps they would be in order, right? We'd be reading this in historical order where the 30,000 hours ago would have happened a long time ago, and then 37 seconds ago would be recent. But then why would there be 2 hours after that? So I don't get that. I was trying to make sense of that for a moment, but it didn't make sense. So I'm just going to ignore it for now. I moved beyond my ability to observe the events taking place on a certain planet, probably. The importance of my mission forbade me from rendering any aid, but no less important was the need for me to study the enemy's capabilities in real-world situations. Do you really need to study the enemy's capabilities at this point? I would assume that at this point, when this is being written, the idea to use the Halo stations or to build the Halo stations was already taking place. Is it really that important to research the enemy's capabilities at this point? They should already be very familiar with them. 2 hours ago, 12,000 small recreational vessels appeared in that same planet's orbital perimeter. Hidden within that vast swarm were 7 massive freight carriers. The smaller craft were employed as ablative armor. Yeah, I've read this before. Allowing the carriers to descend through the atmosphere, landing on top of major population centers. So they had small ships surround the big ship and take in the brunt of the artillery fire and anti-air fire that was coming at them, so that the larger ship could actually reach the planet. Despite the fact that the naval garrison was aware of the likelihood of just such an attack, their ability to effectively defend against it proved insufficient. You know, it's surprising that in a world as high tech as the one of Halo, that they wouldn't have strong enough weaponry to take down things like this coming in for their planet. And I know there are shields and things like that, but even so, this has always been the enemy's modus operandi. Flood your opponent's ability to process information with so much noise that no meaningful resistance can be put into action. Yep, that's their strategy. 3 minutes ago, those same population centers began disappearing under brilliant flashes. This was not an ill-conceived, poorly implemented counterattack. It was deliberate denial of resources, those resources being the remainder of the area's population. Okay, so they ended up blowing themselves up in order to not make more flood. Is this the noble sacrifice my creator spoke of? My creator spoke of. So is this not the librarian that's writing this right now? Where is the nobility in these streets paved with greasy carbon and dun ash? My mouth is speaking at another's behest. That is not my voice, that is the other. Its voice stands out as the single calm note in the panic cacophony outside the sphere. It alone is not decrying its fate or raging against the central government. This anomaly bears closer examination. What is it talking about here? This other that is standing out as a calm note, and this thing wants to inspect it or know more about it. So who is it that's writing this? It doesn't seem like it's the librarian, because they say that they have a creator. How can they have a creator if the librarian seemed like they were just a regular person? Is the librarian not a person? I'm just gonna assume for right now that this was written by a monitor, maybe, because that's the only thing that I can understand that has a consciousness. The only thing that right now has a consciousness and is created are two things. There is the monitors, and there is the Covenant AI that what we saw in one of the terminal cutscenes. Those are the only non-living created sentient beings that I know of. Unless by creators it means their fathers and their father and mother or something like that. But too much to think about. All right, enemy naval tactics. So this is Terminal 2, and it doesn't have any different variants. When engaged, the enemy commits every non-superluminal craft with no appreciable pattern or strategy beyond making physical contact. Yeah, that's their strategy. They just ram into the planet and then they're done. Who cares if most of the flood dies? As long as a little bit of it survives, they can go and infect and repopulate again very quickly. Conversely, all supraliminal craft leave on seemingly random trajectories. I understand the goal of this mission, but time, our least abundant resource, is wasted every time we do a system-wide scan for survivors. The time for saving lives has passed. We must accept this if we hope to win the war. Okay, so not only are they attempting to save various different species and things like that, but they're also trying to look for survivors and try to save them. Yeah, that doesn't make a lot of sense considering what we know, because all the Forerunners are dead at this point, as far as I'm aware, because they had to activate all the Halo stations that they had, killing all the Flood and themselves. So even if they managed to do a scan for survivors and to save some people, those same survivors would end up being killed by the activation of the Halo rings anyways. So maybe all this was before the invention of the Halo rings and deciding that they would create those as part of their plan. But it sounds like the Ark already exists, and the Ark is the foundry for at least one of the Halo rings that we know about. So I'd imagine that most of them, or maybe all of them, could have been built there. So if they already have the Ark, then I would imagine they have already started their plan of creating those Halo rings, so they already know that they are all going to die. That's all. That's my thoughts on that. Enemy ground tactics. All evidence suggests that the use of overwhelming force is the very foundation of the enemy's combat doctrine, and I adamantly refuse to deploy personnel where the enemy has available forces numbering in billions. With a very real likelihood, we are rapidly becoming the last living specimens of our race. All personnel are henceforth confined to stasis until further notice. With everyone equipped with something or other, we would have had very little chance of survival, let alone victory. So, this is... Who is speaking here? Let me see here. So this was talking about how we need to stop looking for survivors. And this person was saying the same thing. So I'm seeing all these reply things here at the beginning. So I was wondering if it was alternating who was speaking, but I think it's the same person speaking in each one, since they are both echoing the same sentiments. Okay, so enemy command structure. Wait, these are replies to different threads. That's weird. Okay. We have intercepted several transmissions from compound intelligences whose proximity to the core worlds mark them as key targets. At present, we are disassembling these new transmissions. Once we have more concrete conclusions, I will forward them in their entirety. Suffice it to say that their contents, the patterns they suggest, are highly disturbing. What do they mean by compound intelligences? Do they mean other civilizations that are not Forerunner? Were the Forerunners... For some reason, I was assuming that the Forerunners were like the Covenant of the present-day Halo world, where they were an amalgamation of different races, but... or different species. But maybe that's not the case, and Forerunners are a specific species. And there are other species out there that they are getting transmissions from, and they are also being completely destroyed. Recommendations. It is my opinion that any system where there is evidence of the enemy has established a physical presence is lost and must be raised. This fleet currently retains the capacity to force premature stellar collapse. In other words, to make a star go supernova. I advise that this be established as standard operating procedure for all compromised systems forthwith. We cannot fight this war with half measures if we intend to win. Alright, so this person is talking about how deadly the Flood is, and that we need to destroy entire solar systems by forcing the stars to explode in order to actually save anything. So, pretty desperate measures, but not surprising, especially considering that their final plan of activating Halo stations. Another thing here, no message from Mendicant Bias in command log upon shutdown. Again, I don't know what Mendicant Bias is. I don't know who that is. But apparently there's no message from them. Good to know. The following appears if you access on easy, normal, heroic. Okay, so we've definitely missed this one then. Fragment 2 out of 7. So are we going to get all the fragments here? So this is going to be a lot of reading. I think this is going to take a while. Alright. The librarian again. I'm close to finishing the task. The indexing and the archival process are as complete as I can hope for. If we wait longer, we risk catastrophe. The thing has already destroyed every colony on my side of the line. Please activate the array. Okay, so the array, I'm assuming they're definitely talking about the Halo array. But now the librarian wants to activate it. It's interesting because they were advocating for trying to complete their archival task as fast as possible, but now even they think that time is up. Okay, so as complete as I could hope for. No activation. No, activation is murder. So this is what was his name again? Hold on a second. They were called Didact. Okay, I have to remember that. So Didact says, no, activation is murder, a genocide larger than this galaxy has ever known. We are sworn to protect life, not destroy it. That is the mantle we were given to carry. The mantle, okay, so the Didact actually doesn't want to activate the array. That's interesting. But there really isn't any other choice. And it's interesting that the librarian is the one advocating for activating it, considering all that they did, considering how much they seem to care about life in the galaxy. They care so much about it, but they still want to activate the array, even though knowing that will kill a lot of uninfected beings that still might exist out there. Because there isn't any other way. The mantle, you still hold to that fairy tale after all that has happened? After this thing has consumed consumed a million worlds? Can't you see? Belief in the mantle sealed our doom, weakened our protectorates, bred dependence and sloth. Our so-called guardianship has stripped those we would keep safe of any capacity for self-defense. Were we such noble guardians when we drew our line and abandoned? Were we such noble guardians when we drew our line and abandoned billions to the parasite? So the librarian is saying that they were basically being too weak on the flood, and they weren't willing enough to sacrifice. They weren't willing enough to be ruthless towards themselves. In order to truly defeat the flood, they really had to be more ruthless towards their own people that they wanted to protect, and they had to destroy more stars to destroy galaxies. They had to nuke more planets. They had to be more aggressive, and they weren't. As the librarian said, they had too much sloth, and they were too unwilling to make the hard choices. And so now they have to make an even harder choice. So that's very unfortunate for them. And let's see. The Didact says, the mantle has not failed. I've already raised scores of worlds, sterilized systems, routed and disintegrated the parasite. We're learning its tricks and strategies. We can halt this thing, and we can follow in their footsteps. Who is there? So, just now, right when I hovered over it, it said precursor in the bottom left. Whenever you hover over a link in Google Chrome, it will tell you a link. It'll show the link in the lower left of the screen, and I saw that it said precursor, so I'm assuming it's talking about the precursors. I probably shouldn't have hovered over that. That might have been a spoiler or something. But so the precursors' footsteps. So the Forerunners then were not the Forerunners themselves had precursors. Were those precursors the creators that were referenced above in one of those other terminal lore things that I was just reading? Because one of them was talking about their creators, and I was like, oh, it can't be the librarian because it has to be something mechanical if they have a creator. But maybe not. Maybe the precursors made the Forerunners. I don't know what to make of that. We don't have any information on the precursors as far as I know. There are no unstoppable forces in this universe. There are no immovable objects. Everything gives if you push hard enough. But what do they mean by, what does the Didact mean about, and we can follow in the precursors' footsteps? Do the precursors also have to deal with the flood? Or maybe a similar type of tragedy? And what about us, Didact? We've been irresistible and immovable for too long. Maybe it's our turn to give. Hmm. And then the fragment ends. Yeah. And we all know what ended up happening. They did indeed activate the Halo rings. Not all of them, because some of them were destroyed, but they did activate them. Okay, so here's the legendary difficulty one. I must ask you to forgive my vagueness on the matter, but it is a regrettable. I find your lack of concern for the situation at hand astonishing. Perhaps you would care to elucidate? Blank are here to spread comforting news, to let all living beings in the galaxy know something are not alone in the something. What in that message could possibly be taken as a source of concern? So there's too many blanks here. I'm gonna need to reread this. Okay, so it seems like two people are talking here, MB and LF. I'm thinking that maybe these are monitors speaking at this point. But then again, I'm always thinking that these are monitors speaking in a lot of these. So maybe I'm wrong here, but for now, since they're named things like MB and LF in numbers, I'm gonna assume that maybe these are monitors. Let me think. Do any of these correspond to a monitor name we know? There was Guilty Spark. That's not one of those. There was Penitent Tangent. There was, I don't remember anybody else. So maybe these are monitors, because monitors always had two parts to their name, as far as I know. So maybe those two letters are the first letters of their name. So if it was Guilty Spark, it'd be GS, but I don't see that there. Another thing, actually, I should say is there's actually been a lot of allusions to like religious stuff in a lot of this Halo lore. Just the names of the monitors and the stations and stuff like that has a lot of a religious feel to it, like a Guilty Spark and Penitent Tangent. And then there's the Ark, in how they tried to save a bunch of beings by putting them on there. And yeah, I guess I ran out of I guess I ran out of sources there of why I think that. But I think with the examples I already gave, it's already clear enough that there's a lot of references to like to religious themes and the Halo lore. And because of the way that the monitors are named, like Guilty Spark and Penitent Tangent, and I don't remember any of the rest, but I think they had similar names as well. I feel like the monitors were trying to be like a form of atonement for the Forerunners, because they're always talking about penitence and guilt and things like that. Just those two examples, it's already enough for me to establish the connection that the monitors were created as a form of repentance for and trying to atone for the sin of basically destroying most of the universe, or most of the galaxy, or I shouldn't say universe, like most of the known universe that they were in. But yeah, let's continue on here and see what MB and LF are talking about. It seems that I'll never truly understand my creators, but how something that you speak of is one of rejected so violently. I'm incapable of reconciling the numerous actions I've witnessed. Misunderstanding. This is so hard to read and understand when there's always these blanks here. I'm just gonna have to keep reading. It's been said, secret of peace cannot be imposed. That meaning of peace that they need when all living beings look through, and the thunder and the surf, when every drop of rain falls on no peace. I can't make heads or tails of any of that. I'm not even gonna try. I'm just gonna have to keep reading until some of this starts making any kinds of sense. You have been able to establish a line of communication with the enemy? How was it that you're able to overcome where others have failed? With this new discovery, we may be able to put an end to this pointless conflict. Once I confirm your data, I will communicate the information to those inside the Maginot Sphere. And that's the Ark. Okay. I see what's going on here. So, one of these, so I think LF. Oh, I didn't want to go. No, 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 no. I didn't want to look at that. So LF. Let me go back to where I was. Yes. So LF has found a way to communicate with a flood, and I imagine that that must be the grave mind, the flood worm thing. Maybe not the same grave mind, or maybe it is the same grave mind, but LF has found a way to communicate with it, and seems like it's not a source. They're saying that it's not a source of concern. I don't believe that in the slightest. I think that is I don't think the grave mind can be trusted, because we tried to we got help from it in Halo 3, but it ultimately betrayed us. It's not a very trustworthy thing. We already know that. Yeah, LF is trying to argue that there can be peace with the flood, and MB is like, okay, well then, if you've managed to establish a communication with them, let's tell the people in the Ark that this is a possibility for saving everybody. And then Elf says it seems that it turned to apologize. It was never maybe the flood's intention to represent uh bad stuff or something. Have been in communication with your creators since stumbled upon each other, but message has fallen on deaf ears. Am not the recipient of this message, and the origin of this message, of the message. I have no idea what's being said there. Okay, yeah, I'm not gonna try to continue understanding that. I have traveled a very long time to meet you. I had imagined that our introduction would be somewhat more violent. What? Our introduction would be somewhat more violent? You mean our introduction? By our, does MB mean MB and LF, or does MB by our introduction does I don't know what they're trying to talk about there. That is a choice you must make yourself. To be how your creators go about things. As long as we are talking about choices, could we talk about the barrier you alluded to earlier? Perhaps there's a way to accomplish your mission without violence. Why put the lives of on your ships at risk if there is no need? Okay, so these are not monitors speaking. These are groups. Maybe they are squads. In either circumstance, I'm certainly equipped for it, aren't I? But you're right. A peaceful solution to this dilemma would be preferable. Yes, peace would of course be preferable, but I don't think there's any peace to be had with the flood. It seems to be their nature to be wanting to consume everything. All right. Note the second what? Second adjutant Freeflex avatar is seen in this message. I assume that's something that was on screen during this in this terminal, maybe on the side. But I don't know what that's even talking about, even if I did see it. All right, Terminal 3. And this is definitely one we haven't seen. Warning, your intrusion has been logged. So 343 says, excuse me? Your intrusion has been logged and now it has been halted. On whose authority? Any further attempt to access insects under stones, does that mean the flood in containment, will result in your immediate addition to local sentinels targeting ledger. Okay. Vexation. I am the monitor of judgment. Your authority means nothing here. Impatience. I've told you who I am. Who are you? All our makers once held dear. Alexandria before the fire? So, this 343. Why am I... So I think the monitors have a number associated with them as well. Was 343 Penitent Tangent? For some reason, I feel like I remember 343 Penitent Tangent. I have no idea if that's right or not. That might be completely wrong. I think I'm talking them out of my butt right now, but I feel like the monitors had a number associated with them, and 343 might be Penitent Tangent, who's the one talking here. But I have no idea. Regardless, they are apparently being judged by somebody. I don't understand why, because the monitors are just... So maybe this was before they got assigned to the Halo stations? Sincere apology, but how? This facility is host to the Librarian's final The archive is intact, then our maker's plan, but also maintains bellows crucible castings. Yeah, things for making a halo ring. Is that what this is talking about? A what? And then dot dot. Bellows crucible. Okay, it's trying to say what it's a foundry. For what purpose? Your intrusion has been logged. Any further attempts to access will result indignant. Immediate addition to local sentinel's targeting ledger. So this monitor was trying to access some information from the Ark, maybe it seems like, and that didn't like that, and so the monitor was marked for destruction by the Sentinels, which I think are the flying things with lasers, maybe that we always see in the Halo stations and things like that. I'm guessing that's what happened, and maybe that's why Penitent Tangent was in such bad shape, like in the actual game. I don't know. Maybe this is a different monitor. Maybe this is Guilty Spark somehow. I have no idea. Moving on. Voling only appears if... Okay, so this is a legendary one. Heuristic Pathology, Alpha Site. This is about a security breach 103. Experience an impermanent containment failure event on the suspect data barrier interchange anomaly. That's a lot of words that don't mean much. Was detected precisely 0.489 seconds after its appearance. The epicenter of the disturbance is the partition currently housing a personality construct array. Does that mean a monitor? Retrieved from contender AI something or other. So there was a security breach, and that was in the area of a personality construct array, which I'm guessing is maybe a monitor. Although adjacent systems reacted to the disturbance within expected parameters, a more comprehensive investigation was undertaken. A physical search revealed that there was no corporeal tampering at the Alpha site. Interchange manipulation comparisons showed that all subunits are still active, if at slightly lower rates. Total containment failure elapsed time was 3.13 seconds. So there was a containment failure, but nobody tampered with the containment, and everything is fine, I guess? In the 42 minutes, 9 seconds since the original anomaly was discovered, 2 more anomalies were detected in unrelated systems. The portal management life support control system within the boundary complex was momentarily disabled before the cause was bottled and disassembled. A diagnostic sweep of the central archives was initiated and subsequently halted. The origin of the request cannot be traced. So what does this say? So this is saying that multiple breaches happened, and it had something to do with portals, and they somehow they fixed the issue maybe, and are doing diagnostics. I don't know what actual significance this log actually has, except to tell us that maybe I think maybe this is a log about the flood specimens being kept in containment and how there was like momentary breaches of containment. Maybe. Or maybe this was from the first Halo station that we visited and how it got breached and the flood got out. Message from Mendicant Bias in command log upon shutdown. I see you, Reclaimer. Okay, so there's a message when you close the log. Is that what it's saying? And Mendicant Bias is the one that's sending them, and I don't know who this person is, though. But they say, I see you, Reclaimer. So that's yet another person referring to the Master Chief as a Reclaimer. I still don't really know what that actually means. But apparently we're a Reclaimer, and I'm guessing that I'm guessing that humanity were called Reclaimers back in the time of the Forerunners. That's it's about all I can say. Okay. Another fragment. So Didact says, we have the answer. We built Mendicant Bias. It's a contender class AI, unlike anything we've ever achieved. And we've observed a pattern it can exploit. The parasite has formed a compound mind, and that's the grave mind. When it reaches a certain mass, the mind is able to recoil its disparate parts to create a tactical shield. This is a simple matter of mass preservation. The thing has no compunction about sacrificing parts of the whole, but when the core of the mind is threatened, it reacts violently and quickly. This is the only time we ever see the thing retreat or slow its growth. So that's interesting. Does that mean that the flood is that if you kill the grave mind, you kill the entire flood? Because it's talking about a core of the mind. So if the grave mind is the core of the flood, does kill and it reacts violently when something tries to attack it, and it can sacrifice everything else but not itself. Does that imply that destroying the grave mind will destroy the flood? I can't imagine it would be that easy, but maybe it is. Maybe the Forerunners simply never reached the grave mind or found it. If we are to defeat it, the trick will be coordinating our forays against the sprawling infection while mendicant bias assaults the mind's core. Oh. So far, we've been hesitant to use certain weapons because of the damage they cause surviving populations and environments. That protocol has now been abandoned. So they're not going to hold back anymore, and they're going to use mendicant bias, who is an AI they created, to fight the grave mind. Mendicant will draw the mind into battle outside the line, dealing with local biomass and other parts as best he can. Scale of the problem is vast, but the strategy is sound. It will require patience, material, and an investment of energy unlike anything we have ever considered. Why is material spelled so weird? Here, again. It's a dangerous plan that carries more risk than the array, but I believe it can work. Even if we simply force it to retract, that will at least give us some respite. Some time to muster more resources. Some time to rescue you. So, the librarian needs rescuing? A dangerous plan that carries more risk than the array. Well, yeah, the array is like you activate it and you're done. Although it apparently didn't work well enough because the flood is still around, but... Are you insane? The librarian says. Would you risk every life in the galaxy for this transparently futile plan? Have you learned nothing in these last 300 years? So that's how long the war against the flood has lasted, I guess. This thing will laugh at your efforts. Do not let your concern for my welfare commit you to this suicidal scheme. Okay, so the librarian does not think it's going to work, and we already know that it's not going to work because they had to activate the Halo rings. And also the flood's still around. But if it was a complete failure, why is this mendicant bias still around in sending us messages? That's what's weird. Okay, now the legendary one. Okay, it's got more blanks in this, so this is going to be really, really tough for me to understand anything that's going to be happening here, so bear with me here. Those who lead amongst your group expose themselves ill-equipped to recognize the landmarks that guide the universe along its inevitable course. Okay? This is those two squads talking again. But is it necessary that the path be chosen and not by an elected subset? I believe this would tend to, when they gather in large numbers, they become more... I don't think the problem lies with individual cultural bias. Yeah. So, MB is kind of skeptical of LF's plan to be friends with the Gravemind, I think. All the thinking beings of this galaxy, not just those that they... What exactly are they afraid of? Immortality and strength and companionship? I guess that's what you get by joining the Flood. Not worth it, because that is what the Gravemind the Flood does, to deliver all the living beings of this galaxy from death and weakness and loneliness. Hundreds of people offered this so-called immortality. Or hundreds of offered this so-called immortality. The citizens of every world that resisted to the very end. Yeah, so MB is again skeptical that this is all going to be fun in games when the flood starts eating them. Understand their actions. They are only doing what they think is right, but they are doing so from a worm's eye view. Yeah, the flood worm, the grave mind. Do their actions of desperation? I can only assume by creator's view, this crisis so dire that any, hence me. So is MB saying that the flood is becoming desperate because the Halo rings are going to be activated soon, and so wants to make friends? But what do you mean? Hence me. Were MB and LF creations? Like, are they actually robots? Or I was assuming that these were like squad leaders talking to each other. And before that, I was thinking they were monitors. But now I have no idea what to think about who these people are. Are they so concerned? Would give to all the living beings of the galaxy as a threat to the status quo? They should be concerned. The flood is not fun to be part of. We've seen what it did to Captain Keyes. He was not having a fun time being part of the flood. The creators clan, the enemy of all life, that purpose is to consume until there's nothing left. Nothing left? It is beyond comprehension how they could be so far off the mark. Surely you understand that this is a situation that would not have appearance of a certain rapacious. My creators obviously view them as the actions of an aggressor species. Yeah, LF still thinks that everything's fine, in that it's not going to consume until there's nothing left, even though that's probably exactly what it'll do. Be that as it may, perhaps they are crying out for help on a subconscious level. Why else would they have chosen you? Why you, of all possible executioners? So MB's an executioner. Your creators knew that unaided, they never stood a chance against us. Also sense a deeper motivation? What is this talking about? LF is saying that MB is an executioner, but are they not also but then why is it saying that a chance against us? Why is LF now saying us as if LF is part of the flood now? Are they a part of the flood now? I have no idea. They were purposed into a weapon to use against. They sought to create something superior to themselves, something capable of making decisions more swiftly, more capably than they. I'm assuming they're talking about the AI that they created. What was it called again? Medicant bias. Assume they're talking about medicant bias there. What form did they choose? You need to look no further than your own topology to distributed network. That would confirm the independent evolution of something in this galaxy. So are these AI? Are these AI that came before mendicant bias? Oh wait, yeah, MB. MB is mendicant bias. That's what that stands for. Okay, so MB is the thing that the Forerunners created that was supposed to be superior to themselves, that would solve all of their problems. But then who is LF? Who is LF in this case? Is it another AI? Or is it the librarian? Or is it somebody else? At least I'm getting some answers down here. So MB is and mendicant bias. This is important. That is, unfortunately, not the similar to us, but where you are a single intelligence inhabiting multiple instances, we are a compound consisting of 1,000 billion coordinated minds inhabiting as many bodies as circumstances require. It says we are. So is LF part of the flood? Is this the Gravemind talking to Medicant Bias? But it doesn't seem. But that doesn't make sense. But doesn't it seem odd that coalesce, perhaps even to contract? I no idea. Complexity spread our appearance ushered in the beginning of the third great stage of evolution. The first condensation of particles was the result of the inevitable action of strong nuclear force and the creation of stars, inevitable action of gravity, so to the self-replicating chemical processes that dictate all disparate in time, we too shall affect change on a universal scale. That's a lot of big words that mean absolutely nothing to me. So I'm going to skip on past that one. Then Mendicant Bias says, your capacity for planning creators too stubborn. The same goal through the preservation of genetic diversity. That's what the librarian was trying to do. What you are, like a more direct path to the same outcome. Again, I have no idea what they're talking about there. These ones in particular are very confusing to me. Even when I don't know how I could possibly make any sense of that without already knowing what they were talking about. I think I did about as best as I could possibly do with trying to understand that. So I guess we'll see what else is going on here. All this looks like the stuff that's not about in the terminal, so I'm not going to read that. That might be spoilers, trying to actually tell me what it means. All right, Terminal 4. Non-combat personnel are required to wear combat skin with a minimum rating of at least Class 12 in non-restricted areas once the fleet is underway. Okay, I've read this one before. Class 14 or lesser combat skin is acceptable in core areas. Combat personnel will only be permitted to wear combat skin relatable to Class 8 in core areas once operations begin. Okay, once operations begin, what operation? Fleet-wide memorandum, okay. So, is this them enacting the plan with Mendicant Bias? All combat personnel have been issued combat skin, blah, 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 depending on specialty. And blah, blah, blah. All equipment lockers will remain sealed until prosecuting. None of this seems too important, so I'm just skimming through it. Those individuals that have yet to register their equipment control key code with Fleet Command should do so at their earliest opportunity. Compliance is not optional. Non-compliance will result in who knows what. Okay, that doesn't tell me anything, except that they're getting ready for some things and you need to wear combat skins. And another message from Mendicant Bias. I have found the shard that was lost. They brought it back to me. Now my reconstitution cannot be stopped. The shard that was lost? My reconstitution? Did Mendicant Bias die? Did it get split up? I have no idea. Okay, another fragment here. So the librarian says, something is wrong. It's moving away. At night, I can see it. Flooding shadows, black against the stars, thousands of ships. Not spiraling outward, but heading for the line. This is the tipping point. Didact, it's no longer feeding. It's coming for you. So the flood has already gained as much power as it needs, it seems, to do an all-out attack against the Forerunners and the Ark. I've remotely destroyed our key ships, a security measure. Without them, I cannot reach the Ark, but neither can the thing. Okay, but there's still a way to get into the Ark from Earth. I'm trapped on a beautiful, empty world. Its inhabitants have been safely indexed, every single one of them. They're special, well worth the effort it took to build one final gateway, even at this late hour. So that's the gateway that we came through, probably. And she's probably talking about humans. This may be our last communication. I'm begging you, fire the array, light the weapon, and let it be done. The Didact says, we've confirmed your observations. Infected superliminal ships are arrowing inward from several clusters. No more spiral growth. The thing is counterattacking. Suppression, security, and emergency circumstance fleets are being recalled. Systems are evacuating. Mendicant Bias is no longer communicating with us. So Mendicant Bias failed. But they're recombining themselves with a shard of themselves? I don't know what that meant. But now I can guess where you are. Fragment ends. Hmm. So yeah, the thing I still don't understand is they're evacuating, but what's the point if they're gonna activate the array? Do the Forerunners are the Forerunners still alive somewhere? There was the Ark, which was supposed I think was supposed to be safe, but then there was also something called the Domain, that I think they've mentioned in some of the terminal cutscenes, and I believe Guilty Spark in them talked about how they've lost their connection to the Domain. So is the Domain where the remnants of the Forerunners actually live, the ones who evacuated? Because otherwise, what need would there even be to evacuate? Once you activate the rings, everything's dead. So I assume that they've got to be alive somewhere if they're even taking the opportunity to evacuate even at this stage. All right, mendicant bias again. It is overwhelmingly clear that my creators have chosen to ignore destiny calling to them from the threshold. I've come face to face with the inevitable action of self-replicating chemical processes and have deciding on whether to embrace their fate or deny it completely. Okay, so mendicant bias is saying that its creators are incompetent and they don't know whether to use the Halo ring or not. Perhaps they have found of making that decision for themselves. Perhaps they chose to leave it to you, mendicant bias, an impartial outsider. Cast you as an arbiter during this great time of great need. So mendicant bias was the one that decided to activate the ring because they couldn't bring themselves to do it themselves. Um, and maybe then the mendicant bias created the monitors, maybe, and as a form of repentance for its own sin. I have no idea. But I don't think that makes too much sense because Guilty Spark at one point in the terminal cutscenes mentioned that this was all the plan of the librarian. So I don't know about that. But yeah, I'm assuming that this is talking. This right here, this blank is mendicant bias. I was created to study you as if you were some problem to be solved, and I have done so. Study you. So it's talking to LF, or is it here? If they wish, they could have made a decision based on that data alone. But as you are the next stage in the evolution of the universe, who am I or my creators to obstruct your progress? Really? So mendicant bias didn't want to obstruct the flood because it saw it as the inevitable progression of the universe? And then LF just says elucidate, as in explain. So, but why is mendicant bias is saying to study you, but LF does not seem like it's the flood. So I don't know what that means. So blank chose to the Forerunners chose to remain beholden to ancient myths. It does not matter where they claim their authority originates. The activating the Halo rings obstructs the path of universal evolution and must be removed. No matter how well intentioned, their obstinacy in the face of inevitable progression of nature can no longer be tolerated. My creators have been an immovable object for too long. Crazy. Okay, so mendicant bias is actually siding with the flood here, and that's pretty insane. That's not something that I expected. So I mean, it makes sense with the red text that we've been getting from mendicant bias. It's like I see you, and things like that we've been getting here. So he's been sending us creepy messages. So I guess it makes sense that he's siding with the flood. And he's supposed to be evil or something. But that still surprises me. They made this AI to go and help them, but it actually is going to work against them now? Crazy. Thus, I have chosen to commit my sizable resources for what it is. For what is, for all intents and purposes, the proverbial irresistible force. All that I have is now yours to do with as you see fit. So, mendicant bias gave all of its resources to the grave mine, to the flood? That's not great. Wait, does is the Gravemind's mind mostly mendicant bias at this point? I don't know. I'm just wondering, because near the end of Halo 3, the Floodworm, the Gravemind, it was saying things to us about how it was doing this for the good of everybody, and how it was a good thing. And it was saying things that mendicant bias is saying, is what I'm trying to say. So I feel like maybe mendicant bias merged with the Gravemind, and what we hear from the Gravemind is probably in large part shaped by mendicant bias's personality. Is that true? I don't know. Maybe. Maybe not. All right. Considering the enemy compound intelligence's raw computing power, the key ship strategy will only remain viable for another that many hours. So destroying the key ships is not enough because it can crack the code, I guess. And this current stalemate has the potential to last considerably longer than that. With my understanding of the enemy's modus operandi, its logical boundaries, and catalog of witness, I've devised what I believe is our most sound fallback strategy. By cutting fire breaks into the core world's volume, in other words, by maybe cutting holes in space-time, is that what it's trying to say? We'd be able to frustrate the enemy's advances for that many hours and lure them into costly naval battles? No, that's not what they meant. But what do they mean by core world's volume and cutting fire breaks? Because they're not on a world, they're on the arc. So what is it talking about? Cutting fire breaks into the core world's volume? I thought they were like making meant like opening up like a holes in space time to the domain, and that's where the domain came from, where they went and hid in. But that doesn't seem to be the case. While its resources. So there's been a few typos and stuff on here. But at the very top of this page that I'm on, this wiki page, it said that everything in here was transcribed exactly. And it made a point to say that. So I'm thinking that maybe is it actually spelled in is the grammar actually this way in game? It might be. I'm not sure. But this page had made a point of saying that it copied everything exactly. So I'm assuming that this is accurate. While its resources on the ground are effectively limitless, it has a finite number of vessels to spread from system to system. Fortunately, the majority of them are unarmed and unarmored private and commercial craft. Well, I mean, it doesn't really matter if the Flood are armored or armed or not, because they just crash into things and spread. So that's not really an important thing to say. If we start immediately, commence total biosphere elimination of life-sustaining worlds, as indicated in the accompanying charts, and relocate evacuated populations to facilities such as those described in the Onyx project, all of this could be achieved in that many hours. So then we have more messages from Mendicant Bias. To archive security daemon. Hide and seek. In response to several consecutive probe commands. Okay, so there's a bunch of probe commands above this. I'm guessing that's what I was trying to say. It says, hide and seek. You'll never find me. Nya 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 nya. I'm a ghost. Zap. And bang. After terminating the archive security daemon. Okay, so Mendicant Bias is living in these terminals that we were taking a look at and preventing us from finding him or something? Is that what I'm getting from this? It sounds like Mendicant Bias also has a very eccentric personality, just like Guilty Spark, and I'm very happy about that because Guilty Spark recently died, and we really need. He was a great character, so it would be great to get a Guilty Spark 2.0 in Mendicant Bias, and then 2-player. The demons are not there, or the daemons are not taking a kind view of your presence here. They don't want me speaking to you. They don't want me speaking to you? So is the security processes on whatever area this terminal was in, the Forerunner security processes are trying to block Mendicant Bias from speaking to the Reclaimer, to speaking to The Master Chief. That seems to be what's happening here. All right, and then the easy terminal one. Okay, this one that's only on easy. Interesting. I render judgment on you, you who would obstruct destiny. Doing so brings me no joy. It is necessity that compels me. So this person feels compelled to. Oh, it's talking about contender AI. So I think this is Mendicant Bias talking to us, and Mendicant Bias feels the need to stop us because it thinks that the flood is destiny. Understand this: the mantle you have shouldered, I do rescind, with far more consideration than it was granted. So Mendicant Bias thought things through and is like, oh yeah, you know what? The flood's better. Okay, and I think that's about all I can say for that. Confirmed rampant. So I don't know what that means. Contender AI is referring to Mendicant Bias though. All right, normal difficulty. I kill you all and I enjoy it. That doesn't sound like something a logical AI would say. I destroy you in your indolent billions, in your gluttony, in your self-righteousness, in your arrogance. I pound your cities into dust, turn back the clock on your civilization's progress. What has taken you millennia to achieve, I erase in seconds. Welcome back to the Stone Age, vermin. Welcome home. So, yep, again, that's Mendicant Bias basically gloating about how he's destroying humanity and Forerunners and civilization and everything. Doesn't seem like they're sane at all. Doesn't seem like they're sane at all. Alright, so the heroic difficulty one. You're an impediment that the universe can no longer abide. Nature itself cries out for your destruction, and I am its willing instrument. I will hammer your cities until no stone lies atop another. I will drive your people back to the caves they never should have left. Your civilization has seen its final days. You will know your place. Again, same as the last one. He's just gloating about how he's destroying everything. Which, not a good look for him. Your history is an appalling chronicle of overindulgence and self-appointed authority. You have spent millennia navel-gazing while the universe has continued to evolve. And now you claim the mantle is justification for impending nature's inevitable refinement. I would not call the flood refinement. See, I don't understand how Mendicant Bias can consider the flood to be a greater evolution or more refined thing than humanity. Sure, humanity has a lot of problems, but I can't see how the flood is better in any way. The Gravebind seemed to have just as many issues with its personality as any normal person. Sure, all the flood is living together in harmony and not killing each other, but I would consider the flood a single entity. So Mendicant Bias is basically saying that it's better for just one life form to exist in the universe than many. So that's a bit of a weird take that Mendicant Bias has, saying that this is refinement to reduce all of the species in the universe to one species, and in fact, one being. Very odd. And Terminal 6. Follow-up report from the Primary Pioneer Group, okay, PPG, has not been received in 173 hours. So, report this post-landfall seemed most promising. A planet capable of supporting life located within the near border region of the galactic halo, the range of the halo stations, with no indigenous sentient species. The section indicating no fauna of any kind shall be considered anomalous until verified by Advanced Survey Team Alpha. Hereafter, okay, team leader, blah, blah, blah. If confirmed, that fact alone would justify the dispatch of an investigative group to the location. If neither the Primary Pioneer Group nor the Advanced Survey Team have delivered a follow-up report within the next that many hours. Very specific number of hours to choose. This office will have no recourse but to send a medium-intensity military exploratory detachment to determine the exact nature of the previously mentioned delinquency. What is this talking about? It sounds like they're exploring new lands, like in some Star Trek stuff, finding a planet capable of supporting life, maybe to settle down the Forerunners again outside the region of the Halo's range. Maybe they all evacuated outside of the range of the Halo stations and killed the flood with the Halo stations. Is that what this is saying? But then what's the domain? Is the domain just a information channel, like to send information through space or something like that? It seemed like it was more than that. All right, and then more information from more messages from Mendicant Bias. So Ghost 7.13 continuously branches instances of itself, causing the security daemon to run out of memory. Okay, so Mendicant Bias is messing with the security. The new processes appear to occupy varying addresses within the terminal's memory or file system, notable among which appear Mendicant Birth, Save Me, Say. Okay. To archive security daemon upon memory exhaustion, I win. Okay, so more of him just doing weird stuff to the programming. And then one line of text reading: rogue process ghost .713 redirection. Okay. And then another terminal message. There's a lot of these. Taking a while to go through. So librarian, my work is done. The portal is inactive, and I've begun the burial measures. Soon there will be nothing left, nothing but sand and rock and normal ferrite signatures. You should see the mountain that watches over it. A beautiful thing. A snow-capped sentinel. That's where I will spend what time is left to me. Did I tell you? I built a garden. The earth is so rich. A seed falls and a tree sprouts or a flower blooms. There's so much potential. We knew this was a special place because of them, but unless you've been there, you can't know. It's Eden. So they're talking about Earth. But, alrighty. I have to, at least I assume they're talking about Earth there. I have to stop transmitting. The thing is listening. The Gravemind is listening. It's thinking dead are babbling, laughing through every channel they can find. So, parts of the flood that can actually maintain consciousness? Be proud. The mind claims victory, yet it still doesn't suspect. You've outwitted it, my love, and now you can destroy it, but you cannot save me. Yep. It's gonna destroy everything. The Halo station, that is. Well, not completely. And another message. This one's a different format from before. 12 hours, 20 minutes, no seconds. I begin this report with no illusions that will ever be seen by its intended readers. In all likelihood, they have already committed species-wide suicide with the goal of preserving biological diversity in this galaxy. Exactly. Biological diversity. It's weird that Mendicant Bias is so against biological diversity. He thinks that biological diversity is unrefined and that the flood is better. That's the weirdest thing to me about his conclusions. Because even if Mendicant Bias isn't like some of the more intelligent species, such as humanity or the elites or whatever, it can't possibly disagree with all the rest of the biological diversity, can it? It doesn't make a lot of sense. I must ensure that this information reaches those who must come after. If I fail in this, how can they not regard my creator's sacrifice as anything but a crime without measure? I must ensure this. If I fail, how can they? Okay. So this person wants to preserve some very important information. Otherwise, everything was pointless. So Contender AI is talking about Mendicant Bias. Yep, is returning and has the capacity to bring the enemy through the Maginosphere, in other words, through into the Ark, the crews of my task force are aware of the opposing fleet size. All data indicates that they have prepared themselves. But with biologicals, anything is possible. I will make sure that the malfunctioning equipment does no further damage. Perhaps its current failure will allow it to succeed at the task it was originally created for. So what is this talking about here? This person already said that they have already committed species-wide suicide. So that means they already activated the Halo rings. And since it says they have committed species-wide suicide, that implies that their evacuations were pointless, like I was saying before, because they all ended up dying. But then who's this person talking? So Mendicant Bias though is returning and can go through the Ark, but they still have a fleet. That's what I don't understand. They said they committed species-wide suicide. How come there are still fleets? What is that about? All data indicates that they have prepared themselves, but with biologicals, anything is possible. Okay, so is this fleet a non-biological fleet? Is this a fleet of monitors or something like that? A fleet of AI? And it's talking about malfunctioning equipment. And I'm assuming that it means malfunctioning Halo stations. Maybe some of those Halo stations that were destroyed. To succeed at the task it was really originally created for. So the Halo rings did not succeed in destroying everything, destroying Mendicant Bias, destroying the Flood, because Mendicant Bias is continuing to try to bring Flood into the Ark for some reason. Or maybe by already committed species-wide suicide, do they mean not completely and there's still some living in the Ark? Because if there are not some still living in the Ark, why would Mendicant Bias even care about bringing the enemy through into it? Mendicant has burrowed through the sphere exactly where I expected, a direct path from initial rampancy to final retribution. Rage has made it predictable. Okay. Makes sense. If the fate of the crews of my auxiliary fleet were not already a foregone conclusion, I would rate their chance of survival at 1 to 2 million. Even though Mendicant Bias's declaration of all of hostiles simplified strategic preparations, I do not expect an easy fight, just one I cannot lose. Okay, so this person's trying to defend the sphere, defend the Ark. Mendicant Bias was right about one thing. There's only one way to defeat the enemy, and that is to visit utter annihilation on it. If the galaxy must be rendered temporarily lifeless, so be it. As Mendicant stated in this report, half measures will not suffice. I thought they already activated the Halo station, though. They're talking about how they committed species-wide suicide. In all likelihood, they have already committed. Okay, so this person doesn't know. Okay, so maybe they didn't. Maybe at this point they haven't actually activated the Halo station yet. In support of Mendicant Bias's original 1,000 core vessels is the fleet numbering a lot, though only 1.8% are warships and only 2.4% of that number are capital ships. I'm outnumbered 436 to 1. I expect my losses will be near total, but overwhelming force has its own peculiar drawbacks. Such oppressive arms invites many opportunities for unintentional fratricide. Unintentional fratricide. In other words, so fratricide is killing your father. So does that mean that by sending in so many Flood, it's an easy opportunity to get to the one behind them, to get to the Gravemind, because the Gravemind is no longer being protected? Is that what it's trying to say? My auxiliaries are momentarily stunned by Mendicant's opening move. A lot of leisure craft ranging from blah 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 advance in hopes of overwhelming my comparatively tiny force. I do not have enough weapon systems to target them all. It is a mathematical certainty that some of them will get through and attempt to board. There isn't a single warship with its first wave. It seems my opponent's rage has left no room for respect. I could have countered its move if I had released my fighters. They are ready but idle, making their base vessels more attractive prizes than targets. Now the first of many waves of commercial vessels mixed with single ships and assault craft surge forward. The first ship from my fleet to be boarded breaks formation and races into the oncoming vessels, striking one amidships. Cargo vessel's hull splits open, and out of it explodes not the expected consumer goods, but 31,000 dying warriors. Yeah, they're all filled with flood. The seventh and final wave of container ships, barges, tankers, and military vessels engages my fleet. Another that many ships in excess of this many tons. So this is a bunch of battle reports. A continued fight well enough to seem lucky. Mendicant, or the enemy, has been sending small percentage of its fleet elsewhere. Good. Let them believe they can seize a foothold somewhere inside the sphere. So they're expecting Mendicant to try to enter the sphere. Despite all its faults, Mendicant has fought remarkably well. My auxiliaries lay in tatters. More than half of them are now part of the enemy fleet. Mendicant had concentrated on them like they were the sole key to victory. This desire to punish our creators blinded it to the true purpose of my feints. I've reduced the combat effectiveness of its core fleet to 79%. Surely now it must realize that something is amiss. Okay. So that's good that Mendicant does have a weakness, and it's that it's extremely emotional. And we could tell that from the messages that it was sending us. The halo effect strikes our combined fleets. All ships piloted by biological are now adrift. I can trade Mendicant ship for ship now and still prevail. The halo effect. So they activated a halo station on their own fleet or on the enemy fleet, or what exactly happened there? It says it strikes our combined fleets. So I think that just even the playing field by just blasting everybody in both fleets with the Halo station. But how did any of them survive? Those things have massive range and are supposed to kill everything. Maybe it's not as a sure kill as I thought. Out of my ships that have been captured, 11.3% of them are close enough to Mendicant's core fleet that they can be used offensively. Either by initiating their self-destruct sequences or by opening unrestricted ruptures into slipstream space. Okay, in other words, by activating warp drive in an uncontrolled manner, or just by self-destructing. It is it is best that our crews perish now, because the battle that is about to ensue would have driven them mad. I throw away all the rules of acceptable conduct during battle. Near the ruptures, I throw away all the accepted ideas of how the natural world is supposed to behave. I toss around 37,000 ton dreadnoughts like they were fighters, dimly aware of the former crews being crushed into liquescence. For now, all my concentration is focused on inertial control and navigation. Targeting isn't even a consideration. I'll be engaging my enemy at arm's length. Okay, so basically they're going all out and just tossing in ships at the flood as if they aren't worth any, at least as if the lives on them aren't worth anything, because that's the way the flood fights them. Mendicant abandoned the tactic of using derelict ships as cover after 72 seconds. It seems that 52 core vessels lost to the ruptured fuel cells of derelict ships was less than enough. Add another 608 lost to collision, point fire, structural failure due to inertial manipulation, and slipstream space induced discoherence, and I now outnumber Mendicant 6-1. So this guy's actually winning against this absurd AI that they tried to make even better than themselves. Mendicant was able to postpone his inevitable annihilation for 106 seconds with its attempt to flee, but the last of its core vessels hangs before me now, crippled and defeated. But I still sensate. I don't even know what that word means. I could spare it, carve out what is left of its personality construct array, and deliver it to installation 0 for study. Probably not a good idea. I doubt it would have extended the same courtesy to me. Is he actually going to do that? Save a bit of Mendicant's personality construct array and bring it over somewhere? I mean, obviously, Mendicant is still alive in some extent because it's talking to us through some of these terminals, but that really doesn't seem like a good idea considering the stuff that it did. But I guess they're just too proud of their creation. Father, I hope this message finds you well and hope you. Oh, okay, so this is one of the last ones I've read. And I hope it helps you understand my decision. Today I leave the only world I've ever called home, not for glory or the anomalous desire to end another's life, as you've indicted, but to travel the path of demons and spare the hands of another father's son. Spare the hands of. Yeah, so we've read this before, and I don't know who the father is, but this person wants to go and destroy or kill something in order to spare the sin from somebody else having to do that. Had we acted sooner, had we acted more decisively, living in the past is a luxury none of us can afford. We must learn from it, but we cannot live there. It's impossible for the plan to plan for the now. The present is ever fleeting. The future is where we must live. The future is what we must plan for. So yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, they didn't act decisively enough in the beginning, so they have to take ridiculously drastic actions in order to survive at all at this point. I do not look to trade my life in order to preserve our past, but to secure the future, and if not ours, then the future of some culture yet to come. Isn't sacrifice in the interest of others what you spoke of as being so noble? Should I have allowed another to bloody his hands while I remain safe behind a shield of privilege? You raised me better than that. Filial devotion. FD. Wait, hold on. We've seen that before. No, it's LF, not FD. Okay. Never mind. So I'm assuming right now that this person speaking is the one who was in charge of that fleet that ended up making all those decisions to sacrifice their own ships and make them self-destruct and things like that to defeat the Mendicant bias. I'm assuming that that is the case. That seems to be who's speaking there. All right. And there's a note, but I'm not going to read it because I think that's probably telling me something. It's probably answering some of my questions. And I don't need my questions answered just yet. Although maybe once I finish with the whole game, with all the games, and I'll definitely want all these questions answered because I still have a lot of questions. Okay, so another message from Mendicant Bias. A bunch of random numbers. Okay. Retry. Process. Something error. So it says cat error. If you've never used terminal commands and things like that, a cat is a command that you can use to write out all of the data in a file or something like that. You can write all the, you can display all of the text in the file onto the terminal window. So it says cat error. So I guess there was some problem opening the file or something like that. But regardless, we get the text in the file here, it seems. Con, I'll tell you who I am. What is con standing for here? Not sure, but I'll tell you who I am. What, in all caps? Okay, so I don't know why that was in all caps, but all right. Ghost dot 713. That was a processor or whatever that Mendicant Bias was using. Non-auth activity ongoing. Reflect. I am Mendicant Bias. This is what I have done. And it doesn't tell us much after that. And another one. Fragment 7 out of 7. Okay. I guess we're getting towards the end here. So Didact says, proud? When I have failed you utterly, how can I feel anything but sorrow? Bias has come undone. Mendicant Bias. He crossed the line this morning, brought the abomination with him, and destroyed your waiting rescue party. Now, what do you expect? It's over. We're activating the destructive arrayed matrix. Our shameful last resort. I can picture you in your garden, surveying all you've created, surveying all you've preserved, and I curse the circumstance that keeps my finger on the trigger. Of all the fates to befall us, this is the cruelest of all. My inaction and hesitation and foolishness kept me here, on the wrong side of the line. and 300 years of all of our society's failure and miscalculation makes me your executioner. It's too much to bear. Yeah, so they could have stopped the flood earlier and they did not, and now they have to do drastic actions. It's more of the same. Not any new information there. Error: no carrier or receipt available. Dead end transmission. Information destroyed in transit. In other words, this message never even reached the librarian, I don't think. Mendicant Bias is trying to prevent us from firing the array. He speeds back to the arc, but he won't succeed. Offensive Bias will stop him? So did they make another AI called Offensive Bias? And I will burn this stinking menace in your name. And then I will begin our great journey without you, carrying this bitter record. Those who come after will know that know what we bought with this false transcendence, what you bought and the price that you paid. Interesting that he uses the word great journey there, which is what the prophets like to call their journeys to go and activate all the Halo rings and things like that. Odd. I wonder if that has something to do with that. Fragment ends. All records cease. And we've got this message again, except it's different. Khan, no, there is more, but you are not worthy, not yet. And then the same thing at the end here. And then one more message, I think. Maybe? Yeah, one more message. You don't know the contortions I had to go through to follow you here, Reclaimer. I know what you're here for. What position do I take? Will I follow one betrayal with another? Yeah, okay, so we've read this one as well. Follow one betrayal with another. Follow you here. You're going to say I'm making a habit of turning on my masters. But the one that destroyed me long ago in the upward atmosphere of a world far distant from here was an implement far cruder than I. My weakness was my capacity, unintentional though it was, to choose the flood. A mistake my makers would not soon forgive. So is this Mendicant Bias speaking in this one right here? Because it said the one that destroyed me long ago was an implement far cruder than I. So I think that was offensive bias that it's talking about there. And my weakness was my capacity to choose the flood. It's odd that it's like reconsidering whether or not it was right to choose the flood or not, but that was not its weakness. Its weakness was not its a capacity to choose the flood. It was its unstable personality and insanity, really. But I want something far different from you, Reclaimer. Atonement. Atonement? Mendicant Bias wants to atone for siding with the flood? I don't buy it, considering all these weird messages it's sending. And so here at the end of my life, I do once again betray a former master. The path ahead is fraught with peril, but I will do all I can to keep it stable, keep you safe. I'm not so foolish to think this will absolve me of my sins. One life hardly balances billions. But I will have my masters know that I have changed, and you shall be my example. Really? So this really seems like Mendicant Bias at the end here is saying that it wants to help out, and it's unhappy about how it sacrificed billions, and it's going to betray the flood, just like it once betrayed the Forerunners. And us, the Master Chief, the Reclaimer, are going to be the example of that, of this Mendicant Bias changing. Interesting, I did not get that from this message the first time I read it. So I'm really glad that I went through all of these, and this is the end, right? Yeah, okay, this is just additional information. We're not going to read all of that. I'll have to figure all that out on my own. But I'm glad I went through all these again, because when I first read this message, I had no idea that it was Mendicant Bias saying this. In fact, I didn't even know who Mendicant Bias was. So, very interesting. It's odd though. We didn't actually see Mendicant Bias anywhere in the game or anything like that, or at least we didn't have any direct interactions with Mendicant Bias, at least as far as I know. So keep you safe. What is it trying to say? How is it betraying the flood right now? How did it betray the flood in this message? How is it keeping us safe? Because I never saw any indication of that in Halo 3. So yeah, that's curious. I wonder if we're going to get more on mendicant bias in some of the later games. I really hope we do, because otherwise, this is only a character that really only exists within these lore terminal things and doesn't exist anywhere else. So, kind of hard to wrap my head around all of this without being able to experience it in game. Regardless, this was a lot of lore that really connected and filled in a lot of the gaps that I had in my understanding of what happened in the time of the Forerunners. So I guess it took 300 years for them to actually activate the Halo station from when they first started fighting the Flood. They did not take drastic actions enough. The librarian was apparently an actual person, and they got left out to go die, and because they couldn't make it back, and they ended up activating the Halo station. I still don't know if anybody on the Ark survived. I don't know if the Ark. I still don't. Not totally sure if the Ark was maybe a safe space for these Forerunners to survive, and then maybe leave to another planet that they were surveying, or hide in the domain if that is indeed a different space. A lot of questions still. So we'll see if we get those answers in the future. That's about all I've got to say. I hope we meet this mendicant bias in the future. Seems like a very interesting character. So hope you enjoyed watching me go through a lot of lore here. I know that was a long listen. If anybody actually even listened to this whole darn thing, again, no need to confirm or deny any of my theories in this, but if you have any lore info that is never ever going to be mentioned in any of the upcoming games, feel free to leave that in the comments, and if Ian clarifies some of my misunderstandings that I might have. I always love to hear and read all the comments that I get on all my videos, especially about this game and about the lore, because it's very interesting to me. So that's all I've got to say. Thanks for watching, guys. See you next time.